This video is by Straight Goods News. SGNews.ca.
About the amendments, we're working on the amendments now as we speak. Some of them are being tabled, amendments to the omnibus budget bill. What are we talking about? How many?
Well, we won't be able to release that obviously until we've actually tabled it. But obviously what we've been doing from the very beginning is pushing the Conservatives back on what we think to be very irresponsible parts of the bill itself. Over the course of the Remembrance Day break, I was in, as many were, in our ridings, and we saw the public reaction as well, particularly the aspects around the Navigable Waters Act and releasing lakes and rivers from protection. That strikes a strong chord with the Canadian population, and so we're going to be addressing those issues at the courts.
But Elizabeth May, for example, says she's going to have about 80. She says they're going to be reasoned, they're going to be less easy to separate and put into categories. They're going to be all reasoned on different parts of the bill. Or is it bigger than a red box and smaller than a Volkswagen? Are we talking 800 or are we talking 20?
We will be putting forward very substantive amendments, and there will be reasoned amendments. So what we'll be doing is hoping to change this bill.
Mr. Julian, on Mark Carney's departure, a lot of people see him as kind of the stability in the Canadian economy. Now that he's gone, do you see is it possible that there's some instability that might be created, or that we might see some ripple effects throughout the economy now that he's apparently going to be leaving in a couple of months?
Well, we wish him well, of course, and I very much enjoyed working on Finance Committee last year with Mr. Carney and having him attend Finance Committee. But the reality is the Governor of the Bank of Canada sets policy in very limited ways. So the issue of economic stability comes from the government itself, and there our concerns have been very clear. 500,000 manufacturing jobs that we've lost over the last few years. The fact that we've got over 350,000 more unemployed than we did before the recession. Those are problems of ongoing instability, and they're caused by the government. Changing the Governor of the Bank of Canada is not going to have an impact on what problems we're having, and the problems we're facing are imposed by this Conservative government.
So what then should we be looking for? What should be the requirements of the person who takes over from Mr. Carney?
Well, somebody, of course, who is highly skilled, understands the role that the Bank of Canada plays and the limitations that the Bank of Canada has as well. And I have no doubt that in Canada we'll have a number of very good candidates.
Well, and should that person be Canadian? Or should we maybe look outside of Canada for a replacement?
Well, I said that there are a lot of candidates in Canada that would do an admirable job, and let's just leave it at that. I'm not one who believes that you need to look beyond Canada to get highly skilled people who can do these kinds of things.
You don't believe in reciprocity? We should have a Brit. In terms of the debate on the amendments, how long do you think it will take? I mean, it could start as early as Thursday. How long do you think?
Well, I think part of the issue is how the government responds. The government has a history of throwing out onto the floor of the House legislation that hasn't been completely crafted, that has mistakes, that has omissions, that has problems. Often the Conservatives try to correct them themselves. But if this government is really open to the spirit of what public opinion is saying about the budget bill, what the government should be doing is encouraging these types of amendments and hopefully helping to facilitate their adoption. So we'll have to see what the Conservative reaction will be. If the Conservatives work in a spirit of cooperation, we haven't seen thus far in Parliament, then I think we would find that we'd be able to get through the amendments much more quickly. If they try to be confrontational, I'm not sure it's helpful, and it may take longer.
But isn't the time that the amendments take more determined by how many amendments you have and how the Speaker moves them?
I think it's determined in part by how the government reacts.
The votes are just up and down votes.
Well, yeah, but we have a government that has said that they want to cooperate and has acted in quite a different way. I'm hoping that the government will be cooperative.
Is your aim to have your amendments more difficult for Conservatives? So you're going to have more amendments more debate?
Our aim is to get substantive modifications to a bill that, in terms of a public opinion, is very, very, very clearly problematic for the majority of Canadians. They want to see, and just looking at one aspect of the bill, they want to see our navigable waters protected in Canada. That's not currently the case in the vast majority of navigable lakes and rivers. So we're hoping the government will take a responsible approach and look to adoption of the amendments we're bringing forward.
Mr. Flaherty, this morning he was asked extensively about whether he's at loggerheads with the Prime Minister when he said that the deficit reduction or elimination would be a year later, and then the same week the Prime Minister said it would be more or less
Absolutely. I mean, what we have is incomprehensible, and this isn't the first issue. I mean, look at what the Prime Minister's saying and the Industry Minister's saying around senior connects, and look at a whole variety of areas, and what you see is a contradiction often between Conservative ministers and the Prime Minister. And I think part of it is this the pressure from the Prime Minister to want to control everything. It certainly isn't in the best interest of the country. There's a clear contradiction, and we're seeing more and more of these. I think the government needs to take a step back from the ramrodding and the bulldozing of legislation through the House. What the government needs to do is start acting in a much more prudent way, in a way that is much more corresponding to Canadian values. We haven't seen that, but I think these open contradictions that are out now in the public domain hopefully will serve to have the government act in a